Hello, we're here today to talk about driving long-term success with the Industrial Internet of Things, or the I-IoT. I'm joined today by Rob Simmons from Sandalwood Engineering and Ergonomics, one of my primary partners in implementing the smart factory at my customers. As a quick procedural note, if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A on Zoom or the comments on LinkedIn. I will get to them at the end of the webinar. Thank you. The agenda for today is the following. I will give a quick walkthrough of some of the key success factors for prime use cases of I-IoT, getting adoption within the organization, and how to get assistance. Then Rob will join me for the rest of the webinar to discuss how we can help our customers achieve long-term success. As a starting point for today's conversation, we're going to assume that you have some sort of implementation underway. You may be just dipping your toe in the water with a pilot program, or you might have an implementation that you've done in the past, but it stalled because it didn't get adoption or you didn't drive the value that management was looking for. Or you might have an implementation that's working, but you're simply trying to extend that success even further. If you haven't started yet, well, that's still okay. There's still value in today's discussion. But you should also go back to our presentation on getting started with Industry 4.0 for more about how to pick the right projects, build a business case, and so forth. So the first topic that we're going to cover today is how to prioritize the numerous potential use cases there are for IoT on the shop floor. Smart factory solutions can have a tremendous impact across the entire P&L. I won't get into the details here, as I've covered that in other webinars, but identifying the potential value is a key strength of Visual Decisions. If you would like assistance with this, please reach out after the webinar. The key point on this for today is to identify where the key opportunities are for driving value in your operations and what needs to be implemented to achieve that value. Once that's known, execute those plans to achieve that value. With those financial gains in the books, that can pay for further expansion. Another key when deciding which use cases to pursue is to focus on enabling people or augmenting their capabilities. One area of focus should be how to change problem solving is done within your business. If you can improve some of these fundamental capabilities of your people, then there's really an unlimited opportunity within your company. This can be done by helping your people become more data-driven and training them to utilize all of the information available to them. Digital transformation projects are an ideal chance to enact changes like this within the organization. Another key enabler or lever is to focus on standard work. The standard work for all the operators should be looked at, but also the standard work for leaders and all the support staff within the organization as well. This is one of those primary levers to create the data-driven organization in the first place. Having a common approach to how work should be done helps new workers get up to speed faster and increases the overall competence within the organization. Finally, this leads me to an example of why it is important to connect everything in an IoT implementation. One of my customers implemented IoT monitoring on a single asset as a trial, with management saying that if performance on that machine increased, then they would expand the usage of the solution across the factory. But since it was only on a single machine, nobody really changed how they went about their work. Quality didn't change the way that they did their jobs to look at the IoT data because it was only available on that one machine. Process engineering didn't change what they did either, and now they did maintenance. In the end, since nobody was using the data, the machine performance didn't improve, even though the IoT system was performing perfectly. Once I helped plant management see what was happening and was able to use the information from the machine to point out several things that could be done right away to improve performance, then they moved forward with the expansion. But this type of mindset is what causes pilot purgatory in many companies. These systems work and largely do what the vendors claim that they do, but the adoption has to be there and people have to use that data in their daily jobs in order to get the improvements that you seek. And that leads me to my next big point. People have to take action to make things better. Having great data in a pretty charts and graphs and sophisticated machine learning models does no good unless people act on the information. The analogy I use all the time is a Fitbit. I've been wearing a Fitbit for 9 years now, and it's a great example of an IoT device. It has advanced sensors. It takes that information, from my wrist. It pushes it to a cloud-based application, has advanced machine learning models there that take that raw sensor data and turn it into footsteps and heartbeats and everything else, presents the information in pretty charts and graphs and so forth, but I haven't lost any weight. And the reason is that I haven't changed my behaviors. And so you really have to focus on not just getting the system up and running and showing all the data in the pretty charts and graphs, but how do people change their jobs in order to utilize that information to make things better? One last piece about the use cases. Look to break down barriers between departments and systems with these solutions. One example is to improve analysis within manufacturing by including information from the overall business context. For example, being able to show the cost or revenue implications of downtime or other events on the floor can change the ways that people react to those events and their overall behaviors in addressing them. Automate workflows towards action. I talked earlier about creating that orientation towards action. One way to do this is by automating certain tasks, or at least the beginning of those tasks. For example, one place this can be done is to automatically create a work ticket in the maintenance system when a production machine goes down. The ticket can even be populated with information from the machine showing the nature of the fault or the fault code coming from the machine itself. You can also look to analyze business outcomes across departments and systems. So an example here would be looking at items that end up in warranty. By combining the warranty information with the IoT data from the shop floor, it's possible to identify correlations with manufacturing processes and which items end up in warranty. And finally, use the information from manufacturing to improve other areas. You can use this information to improve and enhance other systems and processes. One of my favorite examples here is to create a closed loop between the shop floor data and the planning and scheduling function. And this can have tremendous benefits for the company when it's done correctly. Next, I'll focus on how to drive the adoption of these systems within your organization. So the basics of cultural adoption are the same for IoT as they are for the implementation of really any new technology. But IoT does offer some unique methods of adoption that I'll get into in a bit. But for now, let's just cover the basics. Fundamental change management applies here as much as in any project. If you're looking for a good reference that handles the basics pretty well, Leading Change by John Kotter works here. Building habits within the organization is another big key. BJ Fogg's model on tiny habits is fantastic, and that book is highly recommended for anyone. But fundamentally, his equation for behavior is that behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. And one of the unique features of IoT is the ability to increase or augment the ability of the people, and also to set up those prompts for the desired behavior when they're supposed to happen. In the lower left there, overcoming Big Brother is a key concern for many of these projects. People love to have visibility downwards, but people kind of hate having visibility go up in the organization. So let people know that the system is not going to be used to beat them up. It's going to be used to make their life easier. And that has to be kind of continually reinforced by the way that management actually utilizes the data going forward. And finally, have people participate throughout the implementation in order to get their buy-in on the solution. Implementing these systems will definitely require new skills within the workforce. And this can be done by training your existing staff, hiring people from outside the organization, or bringing in some outside help. And my recommendation for the implementation is to bring some outside help to get things up and running in the first place. Work with a team that's been there and done that to get those initial successes under your belt. During this same time, have people that will own the system over the long term work with that outside team to develop their ability to take ownership and run with the solution so that you don't have to pay the consultants forever. And just as important as it is to skill up that core team, though, don't forget to skill up the people that will use the information from the system. This is, includes all those other people that we talked about earlier. And use this opportunity to train the rest of your staff on how to use data from these systems and really to use data in general to improve problem solving, root cause analysis, and much more. I did a webinar just a few weeks ago on the digital transformation of operational excellence, so I won't really dive into the details here. But one way to drive adoption of these systems is to change the structure of your existing OpEx program to have data at its core. This is probably the single biggest leverage point to drive adoption of IoT within your company. And if you want more information, please reach out to me for more details or watch for my white paper on the topic on LinkedIn that will come out this Friday. Just a quick note on having clean data here. People will not use a system if they don't trust the data. Be sure to implement robust data validation strategies, not just for the initial commissioning of the system, but for ongoing data validation. This is a very easy way to lose people in your organization. Fortunately, it's also a it's a fairly easy problem to avoid. Continuously validate the data in the system and make that visible so that nobody can doubt the veracity of the information. My last slide for my section here is, I'll end it with one of my favorite phrases that I've ever heard from a customer: make the ugly visible. And the idea with that is that nothing will get improved if the problems are hidden behind the curtain or swept under the rug. Put visual controls in place to highlight exactly what needs to be done and who needs to do it and when it has to happen. This is one way to create that orientation towards action that was discussed earlier. It also helps to make the system real for everyone since they see it every day. Just be sure the information doesn't fade into the background. It isn't enough to put it on a big screen TV with data on the shop floor. Build your shift change meeting around that information. Have the supervisors make it part of their daily work to review that information with the operators. Incorporate the data into management's Gemba walks. Make it ubiquitous, make it visual, and make it part of everyone's daily routine. So with that, I'm going to introduce Rob Simmons from Sandalwood. Rob, can you give a quick introduction to yourself and Sandalwood?
Hey there. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me today. My name's Rob Simmons. I'm Director of Business Development at Sandalwood Engineering and Ergonomics. Sandalwood is a professional services firm, and we are focused primarily on manufacturing solutions. We do work in some other industries, and we do a variety of work around safety initiatives, quality initiatives, and labor and productivity solutions as well. Our company is roughly grouped in 3 lines of business. As our name says, we have an ergonomics and injury prevention side. We also have systems engineering as a line of business. And finally, where we collaborate mostly with you and per this webinar, systems integration group.
Excellent.
Lately, we've been doing a lot of focus on a lot of changes in workforce that manufacturers are seeing, and domain knowledge, and a lot of digital transformation work around remote visibility of factories.
Excellent. There's a lot of experience that I've had with you guys in terms of making these systems work, at different customers that we've worked on together. One of the first questions I'll ask, though, is how can companies set up centers of competency where they can provide assistance internally so that they don't have to rely on us for years and years downstream.
Well, this webinar is a great checklist of to-dos on a digital transformation project. And to me, it all rotates around stakeholder participation. They're related to almost all of it, including the data cleanup. So I would say if there's the one indicator I've seen in my background of whether a project is going to succeed or not, it is the breadth and depth of stakeholder participation in the project.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that as well. And, it's not just, the engineer or the core team that's working with the project. It's how do you get people involved from, all the different parts of the organization so that everybody feels like they've had a voice and have participated in how this is being done, what's being done with it, and so forth, right?
Yeah, and then the other trick we focus on a lot, especially recently, we find ourselves talking more about better allocation of project labor. So you've got domain knowledge, your engineers, your process managers, and they tend to be placed in charge of projects because they know the subject matter. But that's not always, sometimes that's like towing your boat with a Porsche. Sometimes that's not the way to go. And it's better to separate your project management on these projects from your domain knowledge. And we're starting to get into that more and more, actually.
Excellent. So kind of making a transition there, can you give an overview of how Sandalwood really helps customers achieve success?
Well, as an outside service, one of the things we provide inherently, not being in there day to day, is focus. That's one of the benefits of bringing in an outside partner. We're dedicated to getting that delta, that change, that mission that we're involved in, and so it's harder for us to be distracted with, especially recently, all the chaos and normal day business challenges. The other thing that I think is key to Sandalwood is we're very operator centric. We're always focused on the floor. So even if this is an enterprise mandate, like we want to be getting, for example, OEE data reported real time at corporate level, even when that's a corporate mandate, per what you were saying in your webinar, it makes a big difference if the floor sees where that is relevant to their life and they trust that. I thought that was an excellent point you made about Big Brother, and that a lot of that can be mitigated, we feel, by building things bottom up with a focus on the operator on the floor. And of course, that last one, as I said, is we're starting to focus more and more on treating project management as its own animal in a digital transformation project.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I partner with Sandalwood is the broad focus that you guys can bring. And one of the things that you talk about that's very appealing to me in terms of making all these things work that I talked about earlier is what you call human-centered design and the approach that you guys take to that. Could you give me a little bit more background on how that human-centered design can really help with getting adoption when implementing something like the Internet of Things?
Yeah, so it started organically with us because we've got these different disciplines. And the one thing that our different disciplines share is that operator focus. That's been true for us for a few years. But as we get more and more advanced and more capabilities with these Industry 4.0 solutions, the human element is becoming more and more of a constraint. It's what you really need to focus on, and not just what we're used to with physical issues, but cognitive. We talked about the data cleanup. I thought that was excellent that you focused on quality of data. I couldn't agree with you more that bad data will kill a project quickly. But it's more even than getting the quality data. You've got to contextualize it and not give people information overload, and find that sweet spot of, okay, what's the minimal information in real time that's making a real feedback loop versus deluging people with data and I've done my job. And so focusing on that operator experience and, getting in there and, it's one thing to look at digital designs and displays and information when you're checking a new system. It's another that you've been in there for 3 months and it's the end of your shift. And are you still in that comfort zone? So it's really designing things for the long term for operator adoption. And a lot of that's common sense. Turning that into a formal process to ensure success is what we're doing with the Human-Centered Design program.
Fantastic. And again, that for me is a real differentiator in working with you guys, as opposed to a lot of system integrators are very technology focused and really just worried about, getting the right sensors in place and, having the system implemented according to spec and so forth. And you guys do all that, but you also have that focus on the humans that are part of this process and how you really make this a success for everyone else.
I think it gets back to something you brought up today. You were discussing kind of pilot purgatory and that they set up criteria that doesn't allow for the maximum potential impact. And there's always that balancing act, because you don't want to go too broad too fast, but you don't want to get cubby holed, because you're supposed to change the world with one piece of equipment on one line. And I think it gets back to that as well, because with these digital transformation projects, you don't want to just illuminate your line for data. If you do it right, you should be changing the processes based on the feedback, right?
Exactly. Yeah, don't pave the cow paths. Build a whole road. One of the questions that I wanted to get into is from that outside help perspective. What are some of the differences in terms of doing that initial commissioning of the project and then working with customers, over the long term to help them, maintain the success of the program, not just, keeping the system up and running, but really increasing adoption over time and getting more and more value from the system. Can you kind of differentiate that initial commissioning versus that long-term support?
I guess for those of us familiar with lean and we're used to constraint analysis, right?
Yep.
And chasing out the bubble, I'd kind of look at it as the opposite of that. You've put in a change and it's stabilized. It's now part of your MO. And I would what we luckily get involved with sometimes with customers, and I wish we'd do it more, is we go back in periodically. Okay, now that we've gotten these gains, where's the next opportunity? Where can we push this out and build off that foundation for the next level of gains? And just like we see in lean with systematic review and Kaizen events, I think we'd have the reverse, right? Where can we leverage these changes further and push them outward?
Excellent. We are coming up on our half hour pretty soon here. So any final thoughts?
No, again, I think this was an excellent checklist for someone doing a digital transformation project that you hit today. I can't, for my career, I can't tell you how many examples coming up for every one of the things that you brought up. And I think at the end of the day, the digital transformation should be in concert in changing the processes that it's converting, not just informing them.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you very much for joining me today. And I just want to talk about some upcoming webinars that I have in the coming weeks. So I'll be talking about these topics every Wednesday and more beyond that. So at Visual Decisions, we've been in the business of using information from the shop floor to improve operations since about 2002. And I want to thank everyone very much. Sorry, Rob, I left Mike Vitek's contact information there. If you want to reach Rob, it's actually rsimmons@sandalwood.com. And my contact information is there, so everyone knows how to reach me as well. So thank you, everyone that participated today, and we'll talk to you again next week. And thanks again, Rob.
Thank you, Tim. It was a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.